when a lot of people think about homeschooling, they tend to think of the mom being the homeschooler and she's the one facilitating the education and that kind of thing. But the husband actually plays just as important and key of a role. And so I wanted to take a minute and just kind of pick my husband's brain on questions he's not heard before. These are all new to him. So this is the raw, unfiltered Rick. Just about homeschooling and kind of his perspective on it and some thoughts that he has. Hey everybody, welcome to Mile High Homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Megan. I'm a second generation homeschooler and I make videos about homemaking and homeschooling. They're hopefully encouraging to you in your journey. So question number one is, before we met, which I mean, it's a long time ago, back when rocks were soft and everything. So before we met, what was your opinion or like thoughts and impressions of homeschoolers?
I would have to say that my impression or thoughts of homeschoolers was they were weird, they were unsocialized, they only wore denim. Yeah, I worked at a camp and they had a homeschool family camp week. That was probably the wrong stereotypical impression of homeschoolers, because the typical families that would come out there would have literally 10 to 15 kids, and they'd get out of like 15 passenger vans and like small buses and stuff like that. And they were very awkward. They were, yeah. So that was my impression of homeschoolers. My limited exposure also to homeschoolers before meeting Megan.
When we started dating and were engaged and stuff like that, and we were talking about kids, what was the first thought you had when I said, oh, by the way, like I really want to homeschool our kids?
My first thought was, I don't want my kids to be weird. I also want my kids to have the opportunity to play sports and things like that. Because I mean, your experience with homeschooling and my also limited experience with homeschoolers was that they didn't play sports. They were very sheltered. They didn't do a lot. And that was one of the things that I know I appreciate about my upbringing and my education in school, was that I got to interact with more than just my sister, and my family at home. And so because I had that limited exposure, that's what I thought homeschool families just stayed at home and didn't go anywhere and didn't see people.
How has your impression of homeschooling changed since we started homeschooling our kids?
Yeah, it's changed a ton. I've realized a lot of what I thought school was, because of my schooling background, being in public and private schooling my entire life, didn't actually apply to what homeschooling actually is. I also leaned a lot on you as far as your understanding of how you learned through homeschooling, and then also how you wanted to teach in homeschooling. Along with, I really started coming around to the idea and appreciating it more for the fact of, we can have a greater impact on our kids, versus sending them somewhere else for 8 hours a day and allowing other people to have that impact on them. And we're very blessed and fortunate to be able to have that option, which not everybody does. So I realize it's a huge blessing, but also, I've definitely come around to it and actually really appreciate it now.
What's it been like for you coming from a very non-homeschool family? Because none of your cousins did it, you just have one sibling, but your sister didn't do it. Like no one else homeschooled in your sphere of influence growing up, to a very homeschool family where all of my siblings and I were homeschooled. We all homeschool our children. Like it was like complete opposite side of the coin. Like what was that experience like for you? And like even now continuing, because like we're still the only people in your family that homeschool.
Right. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of inside jokes I was not a part of. So, but no, I think it was really good. And then also learning that there's the types of homeschooling are vastly different that you can do. So I used to think it was like you either homeschool or you public-private school. Like you don't, like there's kind of only two different variations there, but turns out that with homeschooling, there's tons of different curriculums and things that you can follow, ways you can teach your kids. I've just learned a ton, and I, like I said, really appreciate the flexibility that homeschooling has offered us and our family.
What has been one of your favorite things about us homeschooling?
One of my favorite things about us homeschooling so far has been seeing other people excited to learn about how we homeschool, and seeing other people connect with you on that and you connect with others on that. I think that's been really cool, because there's a lot of people that I feel like are too afraid. They want to do it, and that's something that they've thought about it, but they're just like, I could never do it, or it's way too hard. And sometimes I won't be with you, but I'll talk with them about our experience and how I was kind of in that boat too, and just how learning about homeschooling, and it doesn't have to fit the public school or private school box like you think it does. Really they're like, oh wow, just kind of showing others that it's not necessarily they don't have to do it, or it might not be what's right for them, but at least that they can explore that without being totally shutting it down right away.
What has been one of the biggest surprises for you with homeschooling?
I think biggest surprise with homeschooling so far has been how easy it's kind of seemed. Like, obviously I'm not the one doing the teaching and stuff, so I can't say on that side. But yeah, I think, like I said, growing up in going to school, to a school building and everything, just seemed like it was a really big endeavor to take on at home. And I think, that's been the biggest surprise, is just actually how easy it is and how much you can tailor it to how you want to teach your kids, and also what you don't want to teach your kids.
What do you think is one of the hardest things about homeschooling, either for you or for me or the kids or that kind of thing?
I think the hardest thing about homeschooling would probably be that it's probably one of those things where it's easy to do and easy not to do. Where there's some days where it's just like, all right, well, maybe we're not going to do it today because of this, and that. But that can get, I think, really easy. And once again, I'm not the one doing the teaching, so it's. But that's what I've noticed. Like it's hard sometimes because there isn't that break of, okay, we're going to school now. It's harder to create that break in your own home. That sometimes life can kind of take over, and and then school didn't get done that day, or everything didn't get done that you wanted to get done with school, and so a lot more distractions, that sort of thing.
What would your advice be to the mom who wants to homeschool, but her husband is like not on board, not sure about it?
I would say sit down and have a conversation with your husband. Maybe just tell him, hey, here's why I want to homeschool, and then ask your husband the questions about what is it about homeschooling that you don't like, or why are you opposed to this idea? Not like in a challenging way, but just to understand him more. I know until I actually sat down and talked with you about some of this stuff, or explained, some of the reasoning that I had, I guess I didn't. I thought the way I was thinking about homeschooling was pretty much the only way it had to be, and realized I had a very limited understanding of that. And so by you having that background, being homeschooled yourself, but then also being able to explain to me all of the different, types of homeschooling or curriculums, or how it would fit into our life and at home and everything like that, made a lot more sense to me. I'll be honest, I was also excited to hear they can still go to the local middle school, high school, or whatever, and participate in the sports program and stuff like that, because I also feel like playing sports was a big deal for me. So I feel like that's important for our kids too.
So in response to that, what would you say to the dad then who's hesitant and unsure about homeschooling?
I would say it's never a bad idea to listen to your wife and to kind of hear out what she's thinking. Also just it's gonna impact a lot of your life, because if maybe the mom's working and then she wants to come home and be a stay-at-home mom, but then also homeschool, or if she's working and she wants to homeschool, obviously it's gonna impact a lot of that. And so I'd say just talk about what that would look like with your family. Try to understand her too, and why she is wanting to homeschool. Like I said, I was very much kind of against it, to be honest. I was very much in the other camp of like, okay, but like I said, I had very limited exposure to it, and unfortunately a lot of exposure on the very wrong end of homeschooling. And but since it was something that you really wanted to do, I think it just helped me to kind of hear you out, understand your thought process with it, and kind of your plan of attack with it, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I feel like we've kind of covered this a lot already, but I guess if there was one thing that you wish more people knew about homeschooling, what would you say that would be?
Not all homeschoolers are weird. They don't have to be. I think if people knew how flexible it can be, and that it's not just a take it or leave it, all or nothing type thing. You can very much adapt it to your lifestyle, to your kids, to your marriage relationship, schedule, all that kind of stuff. I think that's something I think is really important for people to understand.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming and answering questions. And I coming
You're
down
welcome.
the hall,
Coming down the hall.
all the way from your office to my office to answer questions. But yeah, appreciate you being on here, and hopefully this was helpful to you guys and gave you some good insight and stuff onto what it's like as a homeschool dad and kind of his thought process and perspective on things. But comment down below other questions you have for homeschool dads, or maybe what your husband thinks about homeschooling, that kind of thing. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. You just keep looking at the camera. You keep looking at the camera and smile. That's not what we're talking about on this video.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, my smile hurts.
I can't do it now.